Go ahead and get started. We'll call the August 21st, 2018 Council Committee meeting to order. All right, first item on the list of discussion here this evening. I've talked with Mr. Blankenship and Mr. Hahn and Mr. McNichol, and right now he's listed as number 7 on the agenda, Commonwealth Avenue zone change request. I want to go ahead and pull him up to number 1 if nobody else has an objection to that. And seeing none, we'll go ahead and make that the first item on the agenda. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I really didn't know I was getting into here. I thought this was going to be a little boardroom with 7 people, so I'll kind of 30 seconds about myself. My name is, first of all, thank you for just entertaining my thoughts and my ideas. I hope you like what I have to say. You'll hear it, I'll say it. Well, my name is Bob McNichol, and I'm married. I live in Union. My son Davis is right here. He actually just moved into the property that we just purchased here. The White House, about 7 houses down on Commonwealth. So that's us. I'm married. I have two boys. My youngest has special needs, and my oldest is getting ready to join me in my financial planning practice. And I've been with MetLife and MassMutual with one firm for 35 years. It's basically all firm. We went through one firm. We've gone through a bunch of mergers. But in 1987, I moved to Northern Kentucky and was a managing director and the youngest manager with MetLife in the country. Our office was in the Turfway Ridge Office Park, and we lived in Union. We've moved around 3 times in Union. We love Northern Kentucky. We're not going anywhere. Unfortunately, my office went from Turfway to downtown Third Nome and then to Rookwood. And then as soon as we moved, then there's a 63-day bridge repair project, and we know they're going to work on the bridge. And I can't drive 99 hours a week. I love this area. I want to be here. So I really was thinking, how do I develop a relationship in a city and an office and a place of business? And I didn't want to be in the Houston Road condos, and I was not a fan of the downtown Florence stuff. And I didn't want to pay rent in a big Class A space. And I've basically stalked this White House for about 5 years. I was drawn to Erlanger because it's upperly mobile. My youngest son plays basketball here at Lloyd. Thank you guys for what you do for that. He plays basketball at the church over by the funeral home. Just love it. Erlanger just seems going in such a different direction than Florence is why I picked this. I took the gamble to buy a residential property. I met with Dave Hahn. He was gracious and spending some time with me and going through what we can do and can't do with a residential house and having up to 1 non-family member employee and making sure we had a residence requirement met. So we did that, and we're glad to do that. I actually had a backup offer on the yellow pest control house. It would have looked a little differently by now, I promise you. But that was accepted, but they wound up moving forward and closing. But I wanted this White House, and I just see it as a multi-use property. What I envision for Erlanger is hopefully a lot of you have been to Columbus and maybe seen the Dublin area. And, you know, that may be a little bit of a reach, but imagine the beautiful signs across the interstate, you know, by the bridges or the transports, you know, welcome to Erlanger, open for business. Imagine having a monument right as you get off in the grassy areas on the northeast quadrant of the interchange. Imagine redoing pavers down each side. Imagine, again, I guess I can say it's Connor Chiropractic, Ed and Sarah Beth Connors. They're clients of mine and have been for a decade. I love their home office on Erlanger Road. That was my model for why I wanted to be here. I wanted to buy something there. Nothing's ever available. So it's almost like you have to take a chance and then hope for development ideas from the business community. What can this corridor of Commonwealth look like? I can see a multi-use all the way down. That's essentially a commercial road. And if the projects that Mr. Hans told me about come to fruition down the road, whether it's, you know, mid-level priority or I didn't understand all the details, but even more of a reason to have a multi-use visibility on that. Imagine having, if we go multi-use, for example, on the whole corridor or the whole Commonwealth, there's about 28 or 29 properties on each side. Imagine every property, first of all, goes up a little bit in value, okay, depending on the property. So every homeowner's got a little bit wealthier, you know, on paper. They may or may not appreciate that in the short run, but think of some of the older people that may have really wanted to move and just never got around to it. Think of the landlords that now would rather sell their property. They're not putting money into it. They're just renting it. sell it now because they can get a little more value for the property than it was worth renting. Imagine every one of those properties being set up with an attorney's office or a title company or a chiropractor or a realtor's office. And every one of those buildings then ultimately brings more property tax because the tax base is higher, right? But it also is going to bring some payroll taxes to the city. I think the beautification concept that we've heard and I've seen on your website, imagine being able to, with some of the new revenues from the Coca-Cola employees, do some matching grants for beautiful rock gardens or rose gardens, or to be able to enhance our Erlanger business owners to do discounted work for the development of these properties that are now going to be in demand. Instead of trying to get rid of a property maybe that's in disrepair, all of a sudden that becomes a really good target for somebody, a small business owner, to either knock it down or beautify it, remodel it. I just think this whole strip, if we did pavers, for example, down the sidewalks, and we worked with the businesses to do discounted work for our contractors, our construction companies, our painters, our landscapers, our tree repair, our tree cutting people, just every business associated with a house and a small business to do work to develop. I mean, we'll be supporting our businesses, we'll be raising our tax base, we'll be raising our payroll. This is really, in my mind, a commercial street. We're obviously meeting the residents' guidelines and all that, but I just see bigger and better things for this community, and being upwardly mobile and being a destination, and I don't mean to criticize Florence, but it's just very different in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, thank you.
So, and then, but
so we've got the idea,
Sorry.
I think, that, okay, we're imagining. So let's get to what you're specifically asking for.
Well, I don't know. I just know my biggest concern is that my son's dating a girl he's crazy about. Okay, what if they get married and move out? You know, and all of a sudden I don't meet the residency requirement. My biggest fear is not meeting the residency requirement and having to sell something that I've kind of fixed up and developed, and you know, we've got to go by the rules, but that'd be very disappointing to me. And not only would I like to see mine, it's not really about me. I could see the whole corridor, especially the southern side. There's about southern side of Commonwealth. So that would be my vision and request.
Okay. I think all the council members are aware. Currently, you can have a business in your residence so long as somebody is, you know, occupying. That's what Mr. McNichol's mentioning there. Okay. So, but ultimately, you would want to change the zone?
Yeah, just like
like
the law firm. I noticed they're doing some landscaping things. I have some projects planned in the next 2 weeks at our property. I think if you do it and at least start with maybe ours or somewhere in the first, you know, 5 or 10 houses or the southern side, I think you'll be amazed at what gradually happens. A lot of you are familiar with the BNI networking, and Jessica's got the Erlanger Business Council working, and I don't know who else is doing that with her. I wasn't trying to separate her. I think you'd be amazed at the small business owners that come out of the woodwork wanting to be here, and I really do. So
yeah.
that's why I took a chance to buy
Okay.
That's a big investment. So.
And currently, that parcel is how many acres?
I don't even know.
Okay.
It's
Mr. Hahn, do you know offhand?
It's 441. It's a residential property.
Point what? A half acre?
Half acre.
And the current minimum would be 5 acres, is that correct? Okay. To do a more commercial zone.
Well, just like the Erlanger properties. And those are all 0.2 or 0.1 or 0.2. That's what I envisioned. I didn't mean we're going to knock down 6 houses and build a hardware store. I just meant have a little sign that says Bob's Financial Planning.
So I imagine Mr. Hahn's probably talked through some different options with you. Dave, is that something that you could share with the rest of the council?
Yes, we talked a few things, the same thing that you're talking about, the 5-acre requirement. In our zoning regulations, for it to have a standalone zone, you need a minimum of 5 acres. So you would have to not only encompass the property that Mr. McNichol's talking about, but get other property around it. Or you could extend a zone to pick up that property. The property right across on the other corner is part, what was included into that Commonwealth Station rezoning that we did. You could extend that down to pick up the property if you so desired, and there's a component in the Commonwealth Station that allows live, work kind of businesses of residential and the mixed kind of use that Mr. McNiff was talking about. So somehow you would have to either extend the zone to pick it up or gather 5 acres and say we want to rezone it to that.
So Commonwealth, or I mean, the Commonwealth Station zone, does that stop at the corner of Baker and Commonwealth?
The corner property that he mentioned is doing some landscaping, they've been replacing some sidewalks and such, is in the Commonwealth Station zone.
Okay, so there's 6 other parcels in between there
Between
that we'd have to
that
try to.
and the property that he just purchased.
Okay. So I think that's it's a good goal. It might be a little bit further out, but I think it's something that we could work toward, certainly. It certainly makes sense what you're saying, as far as I'm concerned. Mrs. Fetty, did you have something?
I think it might be an interesting idea to create some type of committee for a Commonwealth Avenue master plan. So I was talking to Director of Public Works, Peter Glenn, this morning about kind of creating the branding of the city and making sure that we're beautifying this area and having a consistent brand across the entire city. So this might be some project that we want to start now. You know, creating a committee of us, whoever wants to be involved, and then going to Planning and Development Services and talking about doing an economic development plan with them, understanding traffic flow, understanding every piece of the puzzle, and creating a master plan moving forward. Seeing if the desired zone change is something that would be beneficial to the area.
Has anyone talked to the other property owners that would be impacted as to how they would feel about extension of the Commonwealth Station zone?
I just bought the property.
Oh, I know you probably haven't had a chance. I was just wondering if David had an
Nothing.
opportunity
That's
to
what
do
I
that.
was going to suggest, that before we get too far into this and start talking about other folks' property, I would. think
Right,
that
because
we'd want-
I would like to see if we're going to get a bunch of objections to it or not,
That-
so
yes.
I'd like to find out, because how many properties, you said it'd be 6 that would be impacted
6 between myself and
in the end of this?
zone.
Okay.
And a couple of those are apartments or rentals,
Right.
you know, already. Not all of them, but I
So that
know.
really wouldn't impact their usage at all, then, would it?
I know of at least 2, maybe 3 for sure, but there are a couple that are home. And
I think this strategy would actually dissuade the renting concept down this stretch and turn a lot of the landlords into either business owners. I just think it would significantly upgrade this strip of property from Dixie to the interstate.
You know, I'm sitting here looking at the map that Mr. Kramer has on his screen. It may actually be easier to go down Graves between the church and then, what is this? Oh, okay. So yeah, there's 2 church parcels, and then the next one is a residential parcel, and you're there. There's only 3 parcels to get there. It would be a little bit more irregular shape, but it certainly could be incorporated in. Yeah, so I think there's different ways of doing it, and I think that's probably the best next step would be to notify those property owners and see who might be open to that.
How would you do that, from curiosity? Would that be a letter, or would that be a phone call?
Well, I would probably do something, but I would notify them somehow to get them notified.
Well, thank you very much for your
Oh,
consideration.
you know, we did have a couple others over here. I saw Mrs. Sedkamp first.
Yeah, first and foremost, you must check with these people that have vested and lived in this neighborhood for 50, 60 years. I mean, sure, they may be wanting to sell, I don't know, but they need to be considered first and foremost.
Yeah, good point. And Mr. Cahill?
Yeah, just be aware too that OKI has Commonwealth Avenue as part of a traffic mitigation plan for Dixie Highway too. So I was looking up the emails the other day, I wasn't able to find that, but that could impact Commonwealth Avenue significantly with widening.
All right.
All the more means I think it's more of a commercial venue as do they if they're considering that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hahn. All right, then next we've got the St. Henry bond request. I think this is mostly me. I'll just explain this real quickly. I spoke with Elizabeth Younger from Dinsmore and Shoal. They are working with the Diocese of Covington on this funding program. St. Henry is in the process of building a new facility out on Donaldson. The project, they're just calling it a new facility, not to exceed $4.7 million. The diocese is borrowing through the Kentucky League of Cities. And actually, it's an arm of the Kentucky League of Cities called the Kentucky Bond Development Corporation, the KDBC. This funding program works with cities because it's through the KLC, and we are the closest city. That's why they're contacting us. We're the closest participating city or sponsoring city. So what this is, they're working through industrial revenue bonds, and we would kind of be the conduit for them to be able to utilize these industrial revenue bonds. And so the city would have no liability with this. All the liability washes through to the borrower. The city is only putting forth their credit limit, and our credit limit is $10 million per year, and that renews on January 1st. We don't have any current programs or projects that we're planning on funding with IRBs for the remainder of this year. And the city's done this before, back in 2016. We did another project for St. Henry. And yeah, I think that's all I was going to present on that. Yeah, go ahead, Betty.
I don't recall the 2016. What about the separation of church and state? I just don't feel we should be involved in a Catholic organization. My sister's a nun. I'm Catholic as day is long, but I just don't think it's proper.
Well, it's not us directly with the church. It's us pledging, putting forth the backing to the KDBC, the Kentucky Bond Development Corp. If you go through the rest of the hoops for the IRB, I'm sure. Yeah. Sure. Mrs. Kyle, I saw you had your hand up.
Just for clarification, that building is going to be an arts center. They're going to have a theater there, and then that's where all your art classes, your music classes are going to be conducted. Because even when I was there, the very first day we moved into that building, we had to build 2 new classrooms that first year. We were already outgrew it. So that's what it is. Their enrollment has gone up so much because they're the only Catholic school in Boone County. So anyway, just so that you know what it's for. It's a good cause, and they've had lots of donations, so I don't see where it would be a risk. And since we're not risking anything, I see no problem with it.
Yeah, Mr. Blankenship?
And just, on the religious aspect of it, we did do this for Baptist Village as well, many years ago, and that's what resulted in the building of that facility as well. Yeah, I was actually, as before I was on council, I was attorney for Baptist Village at the time, but we did industrial revenue bonds for that. Yes, it's stuck in my mind for that reason, I suppose.
Mr. Wickman, I saw you had your hand up.
Yes, sir. There's other precedent for currently St. Elizabeth Hospital as you know, is going through a great big expansion. And the city of Edgewood was approached the same way the city of Erlanger was, and they've done exactly what you're being asked to do. So it's not unusual.
I thought I saw another hand down here. No? Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'd look for a nod from the council if you thought it was something that we should entertain or should move forward with. From here, I think it would be a matter of Mr. Gatlin corresponding with Mrs. Younger to see, what the next step would be on that process.
Which would most likely be a resolution at the next council meeting, is my understanding what they're wanting, which then that would allow them to begin the process.
Right.
A formal.
The decision cannot be made tonight during a committee meeting,
Right,
so
right.
it have to be made in a regular council meeting.
Yeah, and I mean, just to clarify too, this came to me through Robin Cooper of KLC. I know a lot of you are familiar with him. He's a longtime leader of KLC. Okay, well, we'll continue down that route, so we may be hearing about it again at the next regular council meeting. Thank you for your time on that. The next one is the city council meeting ordinance. I think everybody's got a copy of this. There have been a few
Per
changes here,
municipal order is my preference.
primarily to just follow the order that we've been going through in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. Some of the things that have changed, the small things, the order of the invocation and the call to order. We always do the invocation first, so we're just putting it first on the list here. Pulling up the comments by the citizens to being right after the special presentations. And then also clarifying, I'm jumping backward, sorry, back into section 1.3, the city council committee meetings, making this meeting at 7 o'clock and making it be on the third Tuesday, just clarifying that's the third Tuesday of every month. Was there any other changes, Mr. Gatlin?
Did you mention that it would be somewhat making permanent these council committee meetings on the 3rd?
Well, let's clarify that. There was really never anything in writing before that, because the way we were operating before was if a council committee meeting was requested, then we would meet, and if it wasn't, then we wouldn't. I know that's probably not going to be really popular among some of you, but there is always city business to discuss, whether we call for it or not. So that's making the council committee meeting every third Tuesday. I think that's it then. Go ahead, Mrs. Cahill.
Whatever. I don't ever turn mine on, so whatever. Okay. If there always is business, but sometimes there isn't business, so what are we going to do? Sit here and look at each other? I mean, I'm saying, if there is no city business that really needs us to be here, I don't care to be here, but if there is nothing that we have to be here,
Yep.
I don't see that kind of pigeonholes us in to be here on the third Tuesday, even if there's nothing here to discuss or what, so.
Yeah, I guess nobody could show up, and I could say that the meeting's canceled for lack of quorum.
But then it looks bad for those that don't show up, that, don't want to sit here.
Well,
I guess, whatever.
we could clarify that there's,
No
I
city
don't know.
business?
Yeah.
That seems kind of.
I don't see that happening, honestly.
What's happened?
The council members are pretty dedicated, and I know that I think it's happened twice in the last year, where we've actually had issues, and actually one of the things that we're talking about tonight, the assistant at the museum, it's something that we certainly could have talked about last month, but we didn't have a meeting.
That's fine, but we have business, we have city business that we have to deal with. That's why we're here, is because there was actually something that came up that was city
Sure,
business.
sure. There was last month, too. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Wickman?
Yes, sir. Additionally, just like regular council meetings, the council could vote to not have a committee meeting. You know, at the regular council meeting on the first Tuesday, you could vote to, well, we don't have any business, so we will not meet on the third Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, again, just to clarify, the current ordinance doesn't really say it that way, that we meet only if we have something to discuss. That's just something that's kind of been adopted and just kind of generally accepted. But that's not necessarily in writing. Mrs. Pitts, did I see your hand?
Yeah, I have two things. First of all, are we doing seating arrangement changes? Because you said senior member closest to the mayor.
That's how it was before.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there's a couple that aren't that way.
I think fire and
I mean,
public
it doesn't
works.
matter to me. It's
I
just,
know,
I just
yeah.
saw it in here. I'm like, do we have to change seats? I don't know how that.
I'm okay if we don't specify the seating
Okay. Yeah,
arrangement.
because that's really trivial. The other question is the 6:37 thing. I know one issue with the 7 o'clock is staff. Does that mean you guys are staying here all day? Is it just extending your day, waiting till 7 for the meeting? Or do you guys go home, or what do you do? Any of you? I mean, seriously, I don't want to, I mean, if, I don't want it to change to 7 if it's just going to make them stay an extra half hour. You know what I'm saying?
The majority of us stay all day.
Yeah, so, I mean, personally, I don't care if it's 6:30 or 7, but looking at it from their point, if they don't have to stay an extra half hour, I'm back for 6:30. It's just a thought.
Move I think the whole point was to make them the same time between our regular
Yeah,
meetings. Can we bump our regular meetings up to 6:30 then, too?
Okay.
How about 5? Would you say do it from home? Mrs. Kyle?
Well, I think one of the reasons we decided to change it to 7 is when we had all the discussions about the Liz property, some of our citizens were confused.
Right.
And, I mean, to be quite honest, I mean, sometimes it's even hard for us to remember, oh, yeah, this one's at 6:30. I mean, we usually remember it, but I'm just saying, for some people, that could be a problem, because if it's the same time all the time, then they know, you know. And the thing about the seating, I remember when that was passed, we had some elderly people on council who were hard of hearing, and they requested that they sit closer. And so somebody came up with that rule, which, like you said, I don't know if it's that necessary. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
I think most of us here can hear. That's when that came up. I remember that. But I like the 7 o'clock idea. Gives people a chance, especially the citizens who want to come to our meetings, to go home after work, have dinner, and then come back. I think the 6:30 is a little bit, I know it's inconvenient for some people, but for the citizens, I think 7 o'clock would be better than 6:30. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, believe it or not, Mr. Burke, your name came up when we discussed this. Yeah. And the concern was that maybe you would have a tougher time getting to 6:30 every time. Mm-hmm. So if we made that commitment, if you wouldn't mind turning your mic on, if we made that commitment 6:30, and just made, and again, the whole point of this is to make it so all of the city meetings are the same time, so that people don't think that we're playing around.
Right. No, 7 would be fine.
7's fine with you?
Oh, yeah.
So I think that maybe we should have an arm wrestling contest between Corrine and Mr. Burke.
I don't want her to hurt me again.
Is that, I think that's Robert, it's in Robert's rules.
So, yeah, I'm good with that, either way.
Well, I think what they're saying is, would you be good with 6:30?
That's fine, too.
Okay.
Somebody just bring some snacks.
Mr. Nicely would probably be
What's
open to
wrong
doing
with
that.
7, what we've been having all the time? What's wrong with it?
Well, we do
Talking about
this
the committee.
meeting typically at 6:30, the next one at 7. Tonight, we did it at 7 o'clock, kind of, and I think we did this last month as well. And I really don't care what it is, I just wanted to make it consistent. Can we talk about the color of the garbage cans again?
Yeah.
6:45?
Did you hear that? See, Matt has all the good ideas. Takes all the glory.
That's why we keep him.
Okay, can we have a straw poll, show of hands for 6:30? 1? 7 o'clock? 2, 3, 4, 5, okay. 7 o'clock it is, okay. All right. Okay, any other issues, any other things to discuss on this ordinance?
So it's a municipal, or so for clarification,
Municipal.
I'm going to take the seniority section out. That was just taken from the prior municipal order. We didn't change that any, but I'll take that phrase out.
There you go.
So we'll keep seating by committee members, but then you can decide how you want to set, right?
Yep.
All right.
Great, thank you. All right, then the next item, we've got
That was rough.
the model right-of-way ordinance. Are you ready to talk about that at all? We're not ready to talk about that? Okay. We're going to table that.
Okay.
There are a handful of cities that are working on kind of joining forces together on creating this model right-of-way ordinance that would help reduce the cost to the city of Erlanger if we can work with other cities. And it also helps increase the, kind of the power of the, a bunch of cities working together, all keeping staying on the same page with each other. Okay, so then the next item is the Wingate directional signs.
That's
Mr. Burke,
me.
okay?
I just wanted to see what everybody thinks about Wingate. They want some directional signs that come off the expressway. And I do have a question for Dave. Does the highway department put any signs up there? Who puts those signs that you see on the expressway? Put your butt in there.
Yes, we have Mr. Andy Raju here, that is the owner of the Wingate Hotel. What he's wanting to do is we talked to him, I talked to Andy about, and got him the contact information to contact the state. You've all seen those signs
Right.
on the interstate that, this exit has hotels, restaurants,
Right.
whatever. And he did make contact with those. But what he's actually looking for is once he gets off the interstate, they have no problem seeing his hotel, but what he is saying, they have a problems getting down and
Right.
coming around and getting up to
Back
be out
up.
trying to find the hotel. So at that point, he was looking for either directional sign or a sign that's showing the businesses up there. Some of you all may remember, we did that Crescent Avenue, like where A&S Electric is, and through that, we changed the ordinance back in 2002 to allow those businesses to have one of those types of signs up that showed all of the businesses in that corridor, from Crescent all over to Division. In 2000 and something, that got taken out because, again, you all may remember there was a little going on about billboard signs. So the billboards at that time, got taken out of the sign regulations. So therefore, since those were off-site signage, those got taken out of the ordinance as well. So now, here we are, and he would like to, I guess, revisit that section to say if he could have those types of signs.
Well, I think if it's like the Crescent Avenue sign, I have no problem with it. Anybody else got anything to say about it?
When they did that Crescent Avenue sign, how was that paid for?
They went and got the business owners themselves and went and,
Put it all
it was E.L. Spilly who took the lead on it and went and visited all the property owners and got them all to throw in the money. And it's actually the one sign closest to Kent Lands is on city property. The city gave them the permission to put it on.
Okay.
So,
Patty?
Dave, do you think Beacon Orthopedic would allow a sign for the hotel on
Well,
there?
I don't know that. We haven't gone that far yet. I think Andy is just looking at this point to see if the city would entertain that
Well,
sort
I
of
think
thing.
that would be the perfect solution with an arrow. I mean, it's right there.
But Dave, I think we talked about that. Doesn't that still violate the ordinance because it has to, the sign on that billboard and beacon has to be on that property?
Yeah, it would.
So you
there-
wouldn't-
There would still need to be a change to our regulations. So he's asking that we amend through a text amendment to add to our regulations what he wants to do.
Right, and that would be applicable everywhere in the city.
It'd be applicable everywhere in the city.
Yeah. Mrs. Pitts?
when my daughter got married, a lot of people came in from out of town, and that's where they stayed, and they did have trouble finding it once they got off the expressway. So I totally think we need to do something. I don't know if we can just put like a makeshift sign for now, but when Coke and all that goes up there, build something that shows all the businesses that are going up that way. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
But again, I think that would require a text amendment to allow
And
that.
personally, I'm fine with amending the
Yeah, either way,
ordinance.
it would
Yeah.
require a text amendment, and
Yeah.
it could be worded in such a way that
You're going to have a bunch of businesses up there.
But the issue is where to put it, because we don't have,
that's right.
we
It
don't have
can't-
right-of-way there
it
to
can't-
give them.
Yeah, I know our last thing was about the right-of-way, but, you know, by regulations today, you can't put that in the right-of-way, a sign in the right-of-way. It would have to be on someone else's property that would have to agree to it, is the way it worked the last time.
Yeah, Waffle House would have to allow them to put a
Right.
big sign in their front yard.
That's right.
Or on the side, I guess.
The last sign, it was limited to 30 square feet, and it listed, that was the maximum size. 10 foot in height was the maximum height is what we did, and it could show all the names of the businesses in that corridor back and through there.
In the interim, couldn't he just have just like his logo on a small sign with an arrow until we get something for him?
Not off-site. He wouldn't be permitted by the ordinance to have an off-site sign.
Okay. Yeah, I think we should amend that ordinance. It's not fair to the guy.
And as Mr. Gatlin says, that's the whole, opens the whole city. But it can't just be for his business. I mean, that's, any business then would be, or anybody would be able to then put one of those signs up.
There is one business after another. I mean, we need to do everything that we can for those people, I believe. I mean, they're our bread and butter.
This is one of the products of our Erlanger Business Council because this gentleman came to me, and that was the first question he asked. I introduced him to Dave. So I think we're probably going to see more different requests from our businesses because Jessica and I both told the people at the very first meeting that if they needed anything from the city, that we're not running this meeting, they are, but if they needed anything from the city, that we're here to listen because we want to make things as nice for them as we can because we want to keep these businesses in our community. So I think that we probably need to do a text amendment. That would be my suggestion.
Why don't I suggest that we, staff, get something together and get it back to you all and see if it's something that you all can live with.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hahn.
I think one thing just for everyone to consider, and I'm not pro or against this, is just like Dave had said, this will apply across the city.
That's right.
So for all the businesses on Erlanger Road, they would be allowed to put a sign on Dixie Highway aiming them down Erlanger Road. just kind of think about that, of some businesses that we have maybe in some odd places that possibly a resident would be able to sell or lease out their part of their front yard, if it's on the corner of a roadway like that, to put a big sign up. So I completely see Wingate's issue, but just understand when we make this decision, it's across the board. So there might be some other actions in the future that might make us think twice about it. So.
And we could look at ways to get together and talk about some things and think about those very situations and how something could be drafted that could talk about just the folks that are having the issue rather than just, I just want to sign up. So, but we can talk about that. And we'll have something.
It's a good
I don't
idea.
know, can we legally do that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of communities that'll create these mass billboard type signs for their businesses that are standardized signs. So I think the next step would be we probably can work to try to develop something. Now, ultimately, this would be something that would go in front of the Planning Commission and then back to this council. So the next step would probably be, maybe at the next committee meeting, we could have
something.
Some proposed language changes.
Right.
Mrs. Skidmore?
But is there something we can do for this gentleman while we're, things don't move really fast? Is there anything that can be done for Wingate now to get people to be able to find them?
I mean, short of having a person standing out there with a little arrow flipping around.
Yeah, you go.
We have a volunteer. Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like we've got direction.
We'll get together and get something.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then next we've got the Duke Energy projects. Mr. Kramer, ready to talk about that?
Yes, I am. Let me have Steve pull this up. So we're still meeting with Duke a lot, and a lot of their projects are still fluid and haven't locked in dates, but I did want to, or locked in exact designs, but I did want to let everybody on council kind of know one of the big events that are coming to the substation. Can you click presentation? The bottom right, the little, no, left, right there. Yeah. Thank you, Steve. So just a couple things that are going on the Riggs Avenue and Erlanger Road. There we go. Just the distribution project, I don't have a lot for here, but they are going to be running some lines. Obviously, some are already down Riggs that are going down Division. They're putting, I think they probably complete by now with the wooden poles down Division. But these are some of the lines that they will be replacing in the area. The orange there on Donaldson, if you can see on the left-hand side of that map, that will be underground. So everything that goes on to Donaldson towards Houston will be all underground. And that should be scheduled for the beginning of next year, if not towards the end of this year. That's just a quick snapshot of that. Do you have any questions about the distribution? I mean, it's just a replacement of wires.
Is that going to look like the rest of Riggs?
No, so Division will just be the wooden poles, which they're there now. They're approximately 4 or 5 feet, probably taller than the ones that were there, but they're not the large metal poles like on Riggs. The one thing I do want to make sure everybody is aware of, I'm not sure if everybody is the Donaldson Substation expansion. The substation at the corner of Riggs and Erlanger Road, right next to Super Bowl, is going to expand and double in its size. So I'm just going to kind of go over a few things that Duke has given us. Me and Public Works Director Peter Glenn have had many meetings so far with it, and they're still trying to lock in some some information, but I did want to share some of it with you to see if there's any questions that I can get answered or ideas that might come up. Just the project timeline, they've already been staking it out now. In September, they're going to be clearing all the vegetation on the property. So every tree, every bush is going to be coming out due to their requirements for vegetation near the power lines. So that whole area will be cleared out. They'll be installing new, I guess, before January, they'll be installing the retaining wall on the west side of the property and new fence line. And I'll show you a picture of that here coming up. January, they'll be installing the new transformers and the other equipment. And in June 2018 is when they expected to complete the construction and testing. So that's the quick timeline. I'll send this out to council tomorrow. It does have the link there to the notification for this project. The notification has been sent out to all property owners in that area already. So this is what it's going to look like right now, is the design they've given us. So the big orange line, yellow line that's around there is the property line. That's not a fence line or anything. It's just the property line to show how much they own there. The dotted interior line will be the fence line. On the left side of the screen, which would be the west side of the property, the green line there will be a retaining wall. It'll range between 6 and I believe 17 feet on the back. The back side by that parking lot is going to be 17 feet tall. And I had that on this next slide here, but I'm pretty sure it was 17 foot. So that's going to be the max part of it. And I also have a picture of what the wall is going to look like. They are going to extend the fence out towards the front and add a bunch of, inside there, what's sitting there is going to double. And then they're going to have some other metal poles on the north side of the picture there that are going to be added here. And I think I have a couple pictures on that. That is what the wall they're telling us is going to look like. They're going to be driving I-beams into the ground, and between that they're going to have construction or concrete slabs. Mr. Glenn and I have been meeting with them. We actually have a meeting Friday. I was hoping it was going to be yesterday, but they had to push it back. We are going to be working on seeing if there's any more decorative concrete or some other option to put there. I mean, it does back a apartment complex and a parking lot, but still we want them to work on aesthetics a little bit better, since we've seen what they've done at Riggs Avenue. And it's 16 to 17 foot wall tall is what they're talking about, and then on top of that is going to be a 6-foot fence. So that's what it's going to be looking like. You might not be able to see this real well, but when I send it to you will, but this is the additional lines that'll be in that area. So there will be an increase in lines coming out of the substation. Majority of those lines will be going across the interstate eventually, but they will be overhead until they get to an underground to go across Donaldson. So there's a couple views there. Just an aerial view here, just so you can kind of visualize that it is going to double. So there's two metal, they're like A-frame poles there. They're going to have an additional 3. I believe either one's going to be taken out. There's going to be 5 total, but it will double in its space. Just in the meetings that we're having with them, we are immediately talking about beautification, since we're talking to them right now on the Riggs area, the Riggs Road area, about the beautification of that as well. But we want them to have a good beautification plan in place before they start this project also. Mr. Glenn had VX and VX do a quick little diagram to give to Duke of what we want that corner to look like. We do really want to focus on the corner of Erlanger Road and Riggs, since that is kind of like the entryway to Riggs area. We want to make sure that's a very nice entryway, possibly a sign for that area, just so at least when you're going in, it does make the city look nicer. We have had them agree to a concrete entrance to the substation. Right now, as everybody knows, it's a gravel path into the station. So we asked them to at least put like a 10-foot from the street in to the gravel, just so it looks a little bit better from the street. The whole place can't be concrete due to the gravel grounding them inside, but they can at least do the entryway, and they've already agreed to doing that. And then, like I said, we're talking about improving the look of the wall and the fence itself. So we do want them to either do some sort of a slatted fence. They mentioned ivy. There's some other, hopefully some other options that they come up with. But those are the things that we're pursuing with Duke right now. Does anybody have any questions right now? Like I said, I'll send this out. It might provoke some more questions that you can let us know. I think our meeting is Friday. Is that right, Peter? I think it's Friday that we're going to meet with them on the expansion to see where they are with it and what things we can do to try to improve the looks of it. Yes, ma'am.
I really appreciate the focus on the beautification. And I was talking to Peter earlier. We need to get busy on this expressway. We need flowers out there. And I will donate all of my black-eyed Susans. And I will help plant if we can get something going. Peter suggested that we plant different types of flowers that come up at different times of the year, like the crocus that come up through the, you know. Jim will be dead before we do anything on that expressway. Now's the time to do it.
Yep.
Make it pretty.
Yep. And Peter's already been talking to the highway department and everybody to see if we can get the sunflowers like Florence has down at the rest stop. So we've actually, in the last 2 weeks, we've been discussing that. So he's already started that. Talks with them to see what we can do to do something different here that would make it look a little nicer.
Thank you so much. That's great.
Mr. Nyson?
Are they going to do all the metal poles down rigs, plant vegetation around them?
Yeah, if you look at that picture there in the middle, that is what we are hoping it's going to look like. Right now, we're working on multiple grants. Duke provides $10,000 grants for the project. I would say that they agreed to split this into two projects, one Riggs Avenue, one at the substation, so we can apply for a $10,000 grant for both. So it would be a total $20,000 grant. We've talked to Peter, Public Works has talked to all the residents that have a metal pole in their yard, and I believe all of them have agreed that the grass, they would be okay with that. So Duke we're planning that in the spring. We talked to them about it. I've been kind of pushing them kind of hard. They asked if we could wait till the spring because it would be a better time to plant. And I told them as long as we had something in writing that they were going to do it, I have no problem waiting to do that.
I think they're in the process of grinding the stumps.
They are in the process? Good.
Yeah. Are they going to plant vegetation there?
No, so that's the other thing we're going to be discussing, and this isn't necessarily the substation. We're talking about Riggs Road now. We did get them to agree to every tree that they took out during that, during putting the poles up, that they would grind the stumps down and put the yard back to the way it should be. In addition, we've been talking to them about donating trees to each of the homes that they were cut down. We're having a little bit of issues with the trees because their rules on those power lines are so strict now and they're so far back. Technically, no tree can be really in the front yard, the way their rules are. I have asked them to. They're standoff from those poles because they're so, I guess, the high voltage. It's like 20 foot. Well, if you look at most of the yards, by the amount that that wire is off of that pole and then you add 20 feet to that, you're at the front doors. So we're kind of working with them to see, one, if they can allow us just in this corridor, because it's a unique situation, in our opinion, to allow certain types of trees, or we're going to work on something else. So that we haven't really got a good answer on trees. Initially, they said yes, they would provide trees to everybody that, every house that they were cut down on. That was kind of the thing. And the last meeting, they brought up the new regulation about pretty much that would eliminate all trees. I disagreed with them, but we'll see what they had to say on Friday. But the pole and the grass around the pole is definitely a go. They've approved that for the spring.
They can put shrubs or small trees. They don't have to worry about trimming it.
Yeah, unfortunately, their regulation says the word tree. So anything that has the word tree in it, even though if it's a crabapple tree, something that is only going to grow 15 feet. That's where I'm disagreeing with them, that yes, I know that's what the word says, but this is a different area, and I think somebody at some level can grant us permission on this road. Because if you would plant a tree out there, they're not going to come and cut it down. You know, if you plant a new tree, they're not going to do that. Now, they might do it in 15 years, yes. So we're just trying to work with them on that and see what we can come into an agreement on. Any other questions? Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. Great job. The next item on the agenda then is the museum assistant position.
Okay. On that, I did put some financial information, a packet there, if anybody had any specific questions on some of it or wanted to go over anything specifically. We met with the Historical Society this week, and I think we've all came to a good agreement on this. The situation with the museum assistant, the person that was holding that position was terminated in July. When the staff was discussing to refine the duties, some conversations that came up from council and staff that if there was the legality of the position, if the taxpayers' money should be used for the position, and then if the money should be in support of the museum itself. So we took all those into account. The things we considered is the cost of the position, cost of supplies used, the benefits received by the citizens, the ability to properly manage the position, because the position is off-site, so it is a little bit of a challenge for the staff to manage them. And there's no other employees with them, so they're all by themselves in a building, so it's a little challenging to manage them. We do need to develop a new MOU with the Historical Society since it's expired. We considered the amount that we've already invested into the museum and the caboose. You know, a couple of years ago, we spent close to $20,000 to move the caboose to get it restored like it does, and it's absolutely beautiful. So we really need to realize that the city's already invested into that in the past. Also, that the fact that the Railroad Depot Park is very popular with the citizens. In talking the legality of the position with Jack, you know, a lot of it is comparable to the school resource officer. You know, we hire school resource officers for the school, which supports the citizens, so it's kind of that same situation. So that's just kind of the things that we looked at. We looked at initial costs over the last year, and you can see the breakdown here from salary to everything that was necessary to run the museum and support the Historical Society, their mission also. So those are the expenses that we looked at, and they're there on your sheet if you have any questions about any of them. We looked at the Heritage Day costs for the city last year. We made some adjustments to that because not all of it we felt should be on the Historical Society, because we do benefit from the flowers at the park and some of the decorations that we purchased because we use multiple times. So that's the adjusted cost. So we determined as a staff and the administration committee, you know, there are 3 courses of action. One is just to continue what we were doing with no changes, which we did have some legal issues with that, so that wasn't a very good option. The second option was to continue the position, but make sure the expenses that the city is putting taxpayer money to specifically supports the citizens of Erlanger and not necessarily the Historical Society. And then course of action 3 was totally remove the position and pretty much shut down the museum. That was another option that we didn't think was appropriate because, you know, one, we have put a lot of money into it, and it's an important fixture in the city, and it's important to the citizens. So the recommendation is the option 2. We do want to hire a new museum assistant, and make sure that that position, the money spent on it is for the citizens of Erlanger. The primary responsibility will be for the benefit of the city and the citizens. Things that that position is going to focus on is maintaining set hours for the museum. We want to try to increase the hours for the caboose, and the Historical Society and the staff have kind of came up with a couple options on that we'll work through, because we think you know, the caboose looks so nice that we really want to make sure that we're giving citizens an opportunity to see it more. Also, the museum system will focus more on doing displays and presentations to the school to teach the kids about Erlanger's history. Also have the ability to go to nursing homes and other Erlanger businesses where that would work out nice, that they can share the history of the city. And also just to clarify what items that the city is going to pay for and what items that the Historical Society are going to be responsible for. So we did come up with kind of the expenses. The salary of the employee is going to be an Erlanger expense because it does serve the cities, the citizens of Erlanger. For future Heritage Days, we would supply the flowers because that's something we do just to make the park look nice, and the overtime, which is a typical expense that we give to others who hold fundraising activities in the city at our parks. Obviously if it's large enough and there's a benefit to the cities, which Heritage Day is. The internet for the depot, we have an employee down there, so the internet's going to be covered by us. The historical preservation conference, we decided that every other year would be a good time for the employee to go to that, because it would keep them kind of up on any kind of new trends, ways to preserve the history or present it. Also, the energy costs, of course, we would pay for along with the desk phone. So for a year, we're looking at about $23,000, which we thought was pretty reasonable. Some of the Historical Society expenses, and we talked with them, would be some of the printing expenses that they print just for when it's focused mostly on the Historical Society. The cost of insurance for the items inside. We're still working with the Historical Society to determine who truly owns the property inside, and there's a couple reasons for that legally for the future. So nothing that's an impasse. We're just having to kind of determine that. But the city will not pay for the insurance for any of the property inside, and mostly because they're not replaceable. If something does get stolen, Mr. Viox's Army uniform's in there. If it does get stolen, we have it valued at $1,000. Yeah, we get $1,000, but that's nothing that can ever be replaced. So it's really an expense that we already have the insurance on the building and everything.
How
so
much is the insurance?
It's $474 a year right now.
And we can't pay that?
We could. The problem is we don't have an inventory of everything in there. So that's one thing that's kind of holding the insurance company. They don't want to be insuring us right now because we don't have an inventory. So that's kind of another element to that. The problem with us owning the property is that if the Historical Society would ever close or merge into another historical society, that property is ours, which means we have to surplus it, and that means we have to sell it or auction it. And that's not, and
yeah, so?
The historical property, we want to keep with the Historical Society. So if the property is actually owned by the Historical Society, if they would merge with another historical society, that property could transfer to another nonprofit without an issue.
Yeah.
The city of Erlanger cannot take property and give it to a nonprofit. So we don't want to put historical items on eBay, which is why we're working with Historical Society to determine who's truly owns the property. It was put into the city's. It was the understanding years ago that it was the city's property because of the insurance, but that was the only reason.
I know when Mark was here, it was with the city.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's changed.
Not yet. We're just, like I said, we're discussing it with Historical Society. We are pushing for it to be owned by the Historical Society because of that, because that if they would ever merge or something down the road, they would close, that we could give it to Kenton County Historical Society or somebody else that would preserve that history and have it available for future generations. So.
Are we going to get an inventory on the stuff that's in the depot?
If there's insurance with it, yes, we would.
I mean, we're going to get the inventory, what's in there now?
Mm-hmm. We would have to get that. We don't have that now. It's something we've been trying to get for
Then can we talk about insurance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's all good. Thank you.
Yes.
If somebody makes a gift of something to for the Historical Society, is that a gift to the Historical Society or the city? Because I would think if they're being a 501c3, people would be more inclined to give it to them, but how is it classed now?
By the MOU, it says it's ours. It's the city's property. but I think that the reason that was, it was because of the insurance. So I don't, like I said, that's something we're gonna work through, but it's nothing that's gonna keep us from hiring somebody. It's nothing that's gonna keep us from continuing the mission of the museum, so. Yes, ma'am, sorry.
On the salary, is that based on the new hours you want them to work? And if so, what hours were you thinking of?
No, that's still a part-time employee, 20 hours a week, working 3 days, I believe. Is that right? There's a 3 days that they work? Okay.
Is that the hours you want to keep, or were you wanting to increase those? I might have
No, we
misunderstood.
wouldn't be increasing unless we would increase the
Okay,
the
that's
cost.
what, okay,
Yeah.
that's what I mentioned.
No, it's
Thank
the
you.
20 hours a week is what we, unless I did my math wrong.
Okay.
I know someone, Renee busted me out on my math the first round, so I fixed it. At least I know someone's reading my stuff, right? Okay, Ancestry.com, we decided we weren't going to fund, but I think they have an ability to use that from the library for free, so that was another option. And the Google account that we pay right now, we've talked to Historical Society, and there's no reason to have that. They can get a free Google account. So a lot of these expenses, we've kind of worked with Historical Society where it's not that they're going to be paying this much money, but they'll be adjusting some ways that everything's running. So I think it's going to work out well. And now we're going to have an established, moving forward, know exactly what we're paying for and what's appropriate. And that's all we have, unless anybody has any questions for the staff, for the admin committee, or the Historical Society's here to answer any questions also.
Sure.
At the depot?
No, the school zone out here. Troublemaker.
Yes, ma'am. I did ask them a week and a half ago for an update, and the only thing they gave me quickly was it's in process. So they were kind of, I didn't want to push it. They were kind of short with me, so I figured since we're trying to get them to pay for it, I would back off a little bit. But I'll at least be checking with them here in a week or two. So.
Go ahead, Mrs. Scott.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank Matt Kramer and our two lovely ladies over here on the committee and the Historical Society. So many hours went into this. So much work goes into these decisions and research. And Jack Gatlin was one of the ones who went through the legality, and just amazes me all the time of how so many people get together and do such a wonderful thing. But I appreciate all the work that you people put into this, because I think this is a gem in Erlanger. And we were discussing that a lot of us remember when that depot was moved. And it was an exciting day. So anyway, just wanted to say thank you.
Nice.
And Sherry Hoffman, who's not here, she was a big part of getting all that. That's okay.
We do have 4 members of the Historical Society here. Did any of you want to get up and say anything? Anything to add to the presentation?
They said they were just going to be here in case we had any questions
Okay.
specifically for them. You could step up to the microphone if you would. Yeah, sorry.
You have to even hit the little button. You have to hit the little button that eludes everybody. There's a little.
Okay. Red means stop. All right, my name is Paul Dusing, and just a couple comments, and I don't want to get in an argument, but the 2 immeasurables that are not in your data profile, the number of volunteer hours that are saved by these people is immeasurable. The amount of time we put into Heritage Day. No, I'm not going to go into that. It's an immeasurable, and you can't put a pencil on it, so I'm not sure what you're trying to fix. We don't think it was broke. But the other thing is, now I've lost my train of thought. Oh, the cost. We know what it costs to do it, but you cannot tell what the cost of not doing it is. I know a lot of people who come here from out of the state, specifically Ohio, relatives, non-relatives, that comment, they pontificate about this park, and they can't get in the depot. They ask me all the time, what's in there? And I say, well, I'm sorry, it's not open. But you can't measure the cost of not doing this. So I'm glad you're going to keep doing it, but remember what it's all about. It's not always about the money. All right? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dusing.
Mr. Montgomery wanted to.
Go ahead.
Is the Historical Society in favor of the second thing?
What's the second thing?
Your second choice.
Your second choice?
Oh, yes, we discussed it, and we're in a,
Okay.
we're all in agreement that it's moving forward. You know, I know, like you said, it's not all about the money, but we do have to follow certain rules with the city and what taxpayer money goes to. So that was the only reason that we really needed to define certain things. So you are correct, but that's kind of why the financial analysis on it was so important, just to show that we weren't doing anything that was wrong that we'd be questioned for in the future. I'm sorry? I don't want to say anyone did anything wrong. I think there were some expenses out there that the city shouldn't be covering. So that was the only difference.
All right, any other comments, discussion? All right. I did have one other quick thing I wanted to talk about and see if we can get some head nods here. Wanted to mention briefly the meeting that's on Election Day, November 6th. What do we want to do that evening? I know a lot of times there is a meeting here. I would prefer that we either not meet that night or, you know, push it off to the committee meeting or something that date instead, or what do you think? No, I'm not offering. I said no. So, push the meeting back a week, you think? The regular meeting? Do it the same night as the council committee meeting? Okay, so, Mr. Bodie, if you wouldn't mind making that note, we'll have the November regular council meeting on November 20th then. Is that what our head nods are?
We probably want to formally do
7
that
p.m.
at the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll formally vote on that at the next meeting. Okay, thank you. All right, with that, then, if there's no other items, then I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn. Motion by Mrs. Pitts, second by Mrs. Kyle. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.